business owners, they're used to doing something and seeing a very quick response, like running an AdWords campaign or a Facebook campaign, and you turn on the ad, you start seeing traffic, and before you know it, people are filling out inquiries on your website. And it's that real quick response that business owners seek out. And there are so many things trying to grab our attention online, different ways to reach our audience, new ways to market and sell. And that really tends to draw the business owner in, because that's also what they think will solve their problems. Oftentimes they think, if I just had more leads, if I just had more clients, that will solve all of my problems. So that's where they focus.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. I am here with, I'm going to call you the doyen of systems in general, David Jenyns. Dave, thanks for joining me today.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Now, if you don't know Dave, Dave is the author of Systemology, a fantastic and I think potentially seminal piece of work that should be the sort of compulsory reading for all business owners. But in 2016, David successfully systemised himself out of his business, his first business, and one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, melbourneseoservices.com. And through this process, he became a systems devotee, founding System Hub and Systemology. And today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of their business, right, to really move into that higher purpose, Dave. And so thanks again for joining me today. And I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Mate, so tell me, okay, let's go back. Let's go back way back to the beginning of Melbourne SEO Services. How did you discover a passion for business in the first place?
It came from my parents, actually. They were never really great with money. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to grow up like that when it comes to money. So it was almost like a moving away strategy. And I had over the years tried a variety of different businesses, and Melbourne SEO was probably the longest business that I operated in on. But my dad also was a business owner himself. Like, he kind of had always things on the side. So I kind of had that exposure into business. And then I saw business as the vehicle to achieve the outcomes that I wanted.
Talk to me about what you just mentioned. I don't want to do it like that. What were your parents? I mean, because I didn't come from a business family. My dad's an ag scientist and mum's a teacher, so I didn't have exposure to business. But you did. Talk to me. What were you seeing that your dad, what you felt was doing wrong in business, that you thought, well, I'm young and brash and I can do this way better?
Look, I think there's probably just some classic mistakes when you think about the visionary business owner, which was a lot of ideas and then really short on implementation, and trying a lot of these ideas, but only going surface level deep. But then I realized much of the success comes from going deep on something and working through those initial challenges and hurdles and getting over the hump, and then you get the result. Whereas my dad had felt like he was kind of like opportunity hopping and kind of dabbled a bit in the multi-level marketing space and was on one opportunity, then was on the next opportunity. And seeing that firsthand, that was a big thing for me of, you got to remain focused and you just got to do the work over a sustained period of time.
Do you think that's a thing that I guess we as entrepreneurs suffer from, right? Because there's always a new thing, and particularly in the marketing space. Marketing is full of new. I think that's a challenge that we as business owners just generally struggle with, the new stuff, always like the next thing that comes along and this is the next get-rich-quick scheme.
Yeah. Well, a lot of business owners, we want to see the result quite quickly. And it's actually one of the reasons why, and we'll talk a little bit more about systems and processes in a moment, I'm sure, but it's one of the reasons that systems and processes aren't seen as very sexy, because it takes a long time before you really start to get the fruits of that work. Like, there's compound interest at work here when it comes to your systems and processes. And business owners, they're used to doing something and seeing a very quick response, like running an AdWords campaign or a Facebook campaign, and you turn on the ad, you start seeing traffic, and before you know it, people are filling out inquiries on your website. And it's that real quick response that business owners seek out. And there are so many things trying to grab our attention online, different ways to reach our audience, new ways to market and sell. And that really tends to draw the business owner in, because that's also what they think will solve their problems. Oftentimes they think, if I just had more leads, if I just had more clients, that will solve all of my problems. So that's where they focus.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was looking at something recently. I was actually having a conversation with some of the team over at Keep recently, and one of the things that they really sort of latch on as one of the core values is this idea of grit. Like, well, what is grit? Grit's the stuff that gets in your shoes, and
you can't get rid of
grit as a concept, right? And I've heard Brene Brown talk about this as well in context of kids, right? What really defines success in any field of endeavor is this idea of grit. It's the kind of the constant refinement, improvement towards an endpoint, as you said, that compound interest effect. And business is no different. If we chop and change all the time and try different strategies in our marketing, in our sales, in our business operations, right, and we change it every 3 seconds, we probably haven't given it long enough to see whether it actually works. But it doesn't give us the opportunity to kind of continue to work on. And I know you've worked with the man, Michael Gerber, previously, and we'll get into that in a sec. But this idea of kind of working on your system so that you continually refine and improve so that it delivers a more consistent outcome. And if we keep chopping and changing things all the time, it's almost luck or chance that we actually arrive at a goal.
Yeah. I do see that as the biggest challenge that small business has, is this idea of repeatability. Small business is very dependent on key team members, whether it's the business owner or some of your best staff, and things can be done inconsistently. And that really eats away at the profitability and the success of businesses, just the lack of being able to deliver something consistently. So that's one of the reasons that kind of led me to the conclusion that business systems and the ability to develop those processes is the master skill of business, and is because at the kind of base level, systems and process are the building blocks of business. And all we're talking about is capturing best practice and then making that transferable so that other team members can take over, so that you can delegate down tasks to less skilled team members to free up the higher skilled team members to work on their biggest, most valuable tasks. And that's really what it's about. And it can't not improve a business, because it's just about building up these processes, and that compound growth will kick in at one point in time, and then you'll see it, and then you'll go, wow, now I've got exponential growth, which comes from those systems and processes.
Yeah. When was the first time that you saw this in effect? And what was the kind of moment of realization to go, this makes sense, and actually seeing it in practice in Melbourne SEO or some of the other ventures you worked on?
It started, there are different insights at different points depending on where I was at in the growth. So in the digital agency, I remember one big was that systems improve creativity, not decrease creativity. And that happened when I had the video production business. And I remember going on a shoot with the videographer, and we spent the entire trip driving to the shoot with him going, did we bring the extension cable? I hope I got the second battery. Oh, did I tell the client to wear plain colored shirts, not the checkered shirts, because they don't look very good on camera? Like a whole bunch of stuff that just should have been taken care of. And in business, there is a whole bunch of stuff that just needs to happen from an administrative point of view. And that's what your systems and processes should take care of. So after that shoot, we put like a pre-shoot checklist into place. So before he left the studio, he went through the 30-point checklist to make sure that he had charged the second battery and all of the lenses were in the case and we were all packed and ready to go. So that when we hopped in, it was about 6 months later, I went on a shoot with the same guy, and the discussion we had in the car was worlds apart. He's talking about how to get the best performance from the actors and imagining what scenes he was going to capture and what music he was going to do. He created space for all of the creative stuff. That was actually one of the first moments, is building this video business where I wasn't the practitioner. I'm not a video guy. I don't know how to shoot. I don't know how to do the edit. So I got to build that business without me in it from day dot. And then I got to watch all of these learnings from the outside looking in. I think that's what makes it most challenging for a lot of business owners. When you're in it, it's actually very hard to see what's going on, because the only picture you have of your business working is a picture with you in it. So you keep building this business based on that picture because you haven't seen what it can look like without you. So that was definitely one of the very earliest moments where I said, oh, there is something here. But now I've had the good fortune to look into probably hundreds of businesses personally with a lot of the work that I do, seeing the difference of different sizes of business, different stages, different levels of systemization. And there really is no comparison. And every great business that scales beyond the business owner has systems in it. Like, there is actually no other way to do it. So that for me also was that moment of, well, if it's a rite of passage and you have to do it if you want to grow and scale something, like, that's when it hit me that this is the master skill.
Yeah, it kind of defines what a business actually is, isn't it? Right. And
Yeah,
I have a visual in my mind that I sometimes share with my clients, where I go, a business is just a box, right? It's a black box that we put some inputs in, and one really important output comes out, and that's profit for us. Now, if we're in the box is dark, it's grimy, there's lots of cogs and moving parts inside the box. We get a little bit chewed up. But what we ultimately want to do is we want to get out of the box and work on it and make sure that box is operating at its most efficient to produce the outcome that we want to produce from that box, which is the lifestyle that we want our business to give. And the other sort of visual I have in my mind, I recently picked up Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad again, and because I wanted to show it to my son, who's 17 and sort of now starting to get into the workforce and that sort of stuff. And I was working on one of his diagrams where he says most people start with having a job, right?
Yep.
And then we move from that to be a business owner. And we call ourselves business owner, but really we own a job.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where most people start in business. But there's this big transition line between owning a job and owning a business that is really defined by how well we can systemize the delivery of outputs of that business.
Yeah, I love your analogy at the start. And then with Kiyosaki, that bridge that we're talking about, I see that as the biggest problem for small business owners or startup business owners, is making that step from going from I have a business where that's my job versus I have a business that I own and it runs whether I'm there or not. And it has been there since the dawn of time as a problem. And it is probably one of the least well addressed areas of business. And I felt books like Built to Sell and The E-Myth and Traction, and like there's a lot of work in there that they build the case for why systems. And I think business owners intuitively know that systems hold the answer. But always the bit that felt that was missing for me is the how to. Where do I start? What systems first? How do I capture them? To what level of detail do I need to capture them? Like all of those questions are the questions that we're seeking to answer.
So two questions come to mind, and I know, and I would encourage everyone to grab a copy of Systemology because it does go into this in more detail. Two questions. Firstly, do you think it matters where you start, or is it just a case of start anywhere and then do the next thing? And secondly, we talked about you, and you mentioned you see this in businesses all sizes. Do you think it's a unique issue to smaller businesses, or is systemization equally important to more established enterprises who might be 7, 8, potentially even 9-figure businesses already?
As far as the where to start question is, or when to start, just so I make sure, like, are you asking which systems should I put in first, or
where would you start? Does it matter? Do I need to put an operational system in, or do I need to put a sales system in, or a marketing system, or do I just throw a dart and work with whatever comes up and just get into the practice of doing something?
Yeah. If you've not done this before and you don't really see yourself as a systems person, I think focusing in on how the business makes money and mapping that linear journey, like who's your target audience, what is the primary product or service, how do you grab their attention, how do you handle that sales inquiry, how do you close the deal, how do you collect the money and onboard them and deliver, like mapping that, and then thinking where in that is the biggest pain, as in where are you the bottleneck, Or where are you thinking, I don't want more clients or leads because that just means I'm going to have more challenges here? And start there. Maybe it's onboarding. Maybe it's, I don't even know how I'd get more leads. Maybe it's, I wouldn't know how to close them because it's always just me. And so within that box of how does the business make money, then go, where is that pain? And typically starting there is a great way.
No, really great advice. Really great advice on that. But second question then was, is it matter what size you are?
I just had a call this morning with one of our clients, Humane Society, and they are like a animal welfare protection agency in Colorado in the States. And they are like more than 300 staff, and they're still in the process. Once you start systemizing and building up a systems culture, it just becomes a way of doing business. There's no real end point and you don't get off the track. Like, that's just how we do things here. And you train up staff and you get their head around it. And they still, at larger sizes, still struggle with some of the challenges that small business owners have when it comes to systemization. The bigger you get, the harder it becomes to change culture, because people get more set in their ways and they're used to doing things a certain way. So I always say the sooner you can start it, the better. And adding this DNA into your recruitment and onboarding and management processes of how you look after staff and getting them to think about system solutions and what that would look like, the better. I always just say, though, I mean, you are where you are, just get started. We know that this is a rite of passage, and there is no way that systems can't improve your bottom line. Like, they just make you more efficient. They reduce errors. They reduce staff turnover. They make your business more valuable. Like, I mean, that you were talking about earlier about when was the other, like, what is that moment? The other moment I had was when my CEO resigned and of the digital agency, and I'd been out of that business for over a year at that point in time. And at that point I was like, do I want to get sucked back into this business? It's like, I'd fallen out of love with the digital agency work, and the System Hub side of things was taking off. Now, the vast majority of digital agencies that get the opportunity to exit, like, not very many sell, like, because it's built on the founder and they have all that knowledge and they are the business. But I was given an opportunity because we'd systemize it, because it was owner, like, it wasn't owner operated. I had it under management with Melissa running it. I got the opportunity to sell it. And that was another huge moment for me where I realized systems increase the optionality of what you can do, and they will help give you more options when unexpected tragedies happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a key point there, right? We do these systems because the value in a business, right, if it's ever sold, and so many businesses aren't sold, the value in a business is in its ability to produce an income for the owner of that business. Now, if they don't have to do anything to generate that income, it is worth more.
Yep.
If they have to do a lot for that income, it is worth a lot less.
Yes.
And so that's where, you're right, systems can become so important. But so much of it, and I think we have so much uncertainty in business, that the more we can increase predictability of outcome, the better off we are, the safer we feel. Because let's face it, being in business, the number of stories that both you and I have heard about, oh my God, it's a roller coaster. I never know what's happening one minute to the next. The more predictability we can create in the outcomes that business produces, both from a customer acquisition standpoint, a customer retention standpoint, a delivery standpoint, a team member standpoint. You talked about the idea of retention of staff as well being a critical thing. The more likely we are to get control over this wild beast that we've decided to saddle ourselves to.
Yes.
And the only way we can do that is by systemizing our process and continuing to work on and refine the systems as we see the output of what those systems create for us.
Yes.
And so I think a big lesson in this is that we don't have to get the system perfect the first time. We just have to start doing it.
Yes. It's actually one of the core philosophies of systemology, and something that makes it very different from everything that's come before it, is that we capture what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. Because the biggest wins, the quickest wins, those low-hanging fruit come from just making your business repeatable on what's already working. It doesn't have to be world-class, doesn't have to be the best. Like, when you think of a lot of Lean and Six Sigma, total quality management, a lot of these process improvement methodologies pre-assume in their name that you have a process to improve. But if you haven't yet captured the process, if you don't yet know what your baseline is, then you don't have a process to improve. So a big part of systemology is just to go, well, who handles the incoming inquiry well? Well, Sarah, she knows how to answer that call. She does it to a really great standard. She asks these 10 questions. And then if it's the fit, she passes it over to the sales team and she enters them into the CRM. Great. Sarah knows how to do that really well. Let's capture that. And then let's bring everybody up to that standard. And that is the new baseline. We can improve and optimize and tweak. That can come further down the road. But step number one is process capture and making sure that that baseline means something because everybody is following that process. So systemology is not process improvement, but first process capture.
Well, then we're first optimizing one versus nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
Something as opposed to nothing. Dave, what are you in your business now? You're up to 22 staff in the systemology team, which is in such a short space of time is an amazing accomplishment. What is a system that you use in your business now that helps you with your sales and marketing approach? I mean, how do you grow that? What's the system that you use that you can share with us?
The most effective one I've got is one I actually wrote about in my first book called Authority Content. So that was the first book I wrote, but now we've made it infinitely more efficient with the use of AI. So we're big content marketers and we've developed a process where I can sit down and record a webinar. Then we have a process for the way that the team takes that, watches it, time codes it, chops it up to pieces, puts stingers on it, gets it uploaded to YouTube, creates a Google Doc where we have a series of prompts that we write titles and descriptions and social media content. And then that video gets syndicated out across multiple different platforms. It's emailed out to our database and it's a great organic traffic where people come in, they watch our content, they get pre-sold and some exposure to us before they even ever chat with us. And I love it because it's got great lifetime value. I'm creating content that then will exist and have value for years and years. And each little bit of content, whether it's a YouTube video or a blog post related to that one bit of content, they all send me a little bit of traffic and it all kind of adds up and it's this snowball effect. And with our understanding and thinking around systems, because we obviously systemize that to a great level, then augmenting that with AI, ChatGPT, Claude, and some of the other services that then enable us to basically do more with less. Within probably about the last 6 to 9 months, we've probably tripled or quadrupled the output, increasing the quality at a lower cost with less team members. So it's been a real game changer for us, and we've really dialed that process in. And that's a huge part of our content marketing and our way that we generate leads.
Well, it sounds like a pretty cool thing to use. But that's one thing has really dominated the conversation in 2023. And I think a lot of people don't really know how to use it. I use it. I think my team produced something the other day using AI, and I think they just said, make it sound Australian. And so like it was full of mates and crikeys. And
yeah, it's funny with the AI, the biggest lesson that we've found is and we talked about this just before we started hitting record, you have to be careful as the business owner not to chase the shiny object. The best way to use AI is to go, what are we already currently doing? And how can we use the AI to make us more efficient, make a higher quality output at a lower price? So for us, it actually started off with, we thought, what is a task that we know every business needs to be doing more of, but they very rarely find the time, and business owners oftentimes don't normally like doing it? And then we thought, processes and procedures. Of course, we're a little bit biased here, but then we started using AI to help us develop our processes and procedures, taking Loom videos and getting the transcripts and feeding them into ChatGPT and using that as a way to develop the first draft of systems and processes. But then that ended up bleeding into other things that we're already doing. But my biggest piece of advice when it comes to AI for business owners is look at what you're currently doing and it's already part of your day to day, and then think, how can AI speed that up? As opposed to, I heard about this great new platform called Midjourney that can create me a fancy graphic, and I can get it done for next to nothing just by emptying in this prompt here. And then you think, well, why would I do that? How is that adding value to anything? Just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. It really is about figuring out the essential elements of the work that you're doing and using AI to get that done.
Well, I think you're coming back to, what is my core business? Right?
Yeah.
What is my process, and mapping that operating system out first, and then looking at what tools do I have available to me to optimize, systemize, and potentially automate that as appropriate. All right? And then putting a business case to it. Some things you don't want to automate because it doesn't actually create any value. And I know I talk to our clients about that when we're looking at automation, right? Just because I can automate it doesn't mean it necessarily should be.
Yes,
right?
That's another.
Because it might actually detract from my customer experience.
Yeah, that's definitely another biggie. And I often think about the way that Google creates their systems and processes. They're a heavily systems driven business. The whole idea of the search is it's an algorithm. So it is a system that trawls through things. And what do? They don't just jump straight to, oh, yes, let's write a machine to do it. They come up with a hypothesis and they say, oh, we believe making these changes will improve the results by this. And then they get their quality guidelines together with humans that are reviewing the result, and they roll it out and they review it. And it's not until it's reviewed and approved and, yes, this is looking good, that they then write it into the algorithm and the machine. And the takeaway here is you start off with human automation first. So that way you can ensure that you're getting the output that you want, and that it's worthwhile, and there's a real business case for why you would want to be doing that. And you do human automation first, which for me is what a lot of systems and process is about. System and process is about figuring out, well, what do we want to get done? And then you're getting a human to execute it. And the automation piece comes last after you determine, yes, we want to do this. Yes, this is essential. And we do it quite often. Okay, well, let's now add in automation to make it more efficient, because then we know instantly by making that change, that money drops straight to the bottom line because it's an essential part of business. And I think that's one of the things I love about the work that you do. Like, when you're at that stage, by putting that level of automation in, it just equals money into the bottom line for business owners.
Yeah, and that's what the purpose is. We're there to make money. Let's pivot. Quick fire time.
Yes, let's do it.
In your opinion, what do you think is the most important personality trait or strength that someone needs to be a systems champion or a systemologist?
I think persistence. You just have to be able to stick with something, because all of the resistance for any sort of change happens up front. Team members will go, oh, I've always done it this way. Why do I need to change? Or team members will have a little black box that they operate in, and they don't want people to know what they're doing, so that no one can really narrow in if they're efficient or not. So there's all of that resistance happens up front, and all of the good stuff that you get as a result of systemizing your business happens further down the road, as I talked about, with that compound effect that happens once you layer successful systems on top of each other. But you only ever experience that by persisting through long enough to get the result.
What do you think the keys to building a great team are?
I think great leadership is a huge part of it. Like, if you want to attract in A players, you need to be operating to a high enough level. It's kind of like that. I remember, must have been Tony Robbins or something like that. They were talking about when you are looking for the perfect partner, and you think about who the perfect partner is, but then think about, well, what partner do you need to be attractive to that perfect partner that you want to attract into your world? And then you need to start to be that person. And it's similar for building a great team. You have to think about, well, what type of person or leader as a business owner do you need to be able to attract those people in?
Yeah, awesome. We didn't touch on it too much, but I know you worked very closely with Michael Gerber for a while. What's one lasting piece of advice from Michael that you hold really firmly to?
One that sticks in my head was the one that he gave me straight after reading Systemology. He said, Dave, be careful. Don't let the business owner off the hook. Because when I first wrote Systemology, I made it really sound like the team will do everything. and the business owner doesn't have to be doing any of this systems and processes stuff. You just got to get it and then you completely handball it. And he said, while the team can do the documentation and they can drive it, the business owner needs to lead, and they need to not be above the law. They need to follow the system when they're operating in the system. And this business owner still needs to go to school. You can't just let them off the hook. This is not something that will do them a service. So that always stuck with me. Don't let the business owner off the hook.
I love that. I think it's a thing. We think that just because we're exiting the business means we don't want to abdicate responsibility. We can assign responsibility, but we don't want to abdicate it.
Yes, 100%.
Mate, through your work, this is a bit of a curly one because I didn't pre-warn you of this. How's your dad changed his business as a result of the stuff that you've been doing?
Well, he has. My dad's actually passed, so he's not. A lot of the lessons that he taught me has stuck with me. Another one I talk about in the book, because my dad was actually a systems engineer, so I, whether consciously or subconsciously, had systems programmed into me at a very young age. And he developed something called the sheet for my brother and I, which was the very first system that I remember seeing. And it was basically a way for my brother and I to earn points for doing different activities, things like making our bed and being good to our mum and doing the dishes and brushing our teeth and all the stuff that he wanted us to do. We could earn points for it. And then at the end of the week, he would tally all those points up. And then there was a scoring legend, and it would basically equal our pocket money. So those lessons are now just intertwined into my life and the way that we approach business.
Classic. That's awesome. Lastly, where do you turn when you feel stuck?
I've got a few sort of people like that I like they're usually fellow business owners that have been on the journey typically longer than I have. And so I've just got a few colleagues that I've come across in my travels that we've connected with and that just built up a great relationship with. And normally I'll connect with them and we just sort of bounce some ideas around, and it's good. It's kind of like a bit of a two-way street where same, when they've got some challenges or they just want a sounding board, we kind of do that for each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Lastly, Dave, where can we find you online?
Best place would be head to Amazon if you haven't already. Get yourself a copy of Systemology from there. If you're listening to this, you're probably an audio person, so there's also an Audible version. So head over to Audible for that. And then if you need help beyond that, just systemology.com. And you can find links to the YouTube channel and extra resources if you need a hand.
Yeah, awesome. We'll put all those links in the show notes, Dave. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your wealth of knowledge, mate. It's been absolutely awesome, and appreciate all your expertise and all you do for business owners and helping us achieve greater than we could possibly achieve on our own.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tim.
Guys, thanks again for joining us on today's episode of More Clients, Less Effort. If you've enjoyed today's episode and don't want to miss another one, please click the three dots at the top of your phone, like, subscribe, follow, and share with someone you think that might get some value out of our conversation with Dave today and other episodes that we've recorded. And we'll catch you next time. Take care.